Hi, everyone. Welcome to SIMBA's, which is Students in Media Broadcasting Association, First Millennial Lens Vodcast. And today we have Brad Rushing here with us, and he is a very well-known cinematographer. And so welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you. Just give us a little bit of a background. What exactly is cinematography?
So cinematography has to do with the photography of the motion picture image, and it involves everything having to do with the camera and the lights. So as a cinematographer, you would be involved consulting with the director on, maybe choosing the lenses that you shoot. You would be involved in picking a camera. You'd be responsible for a lot of the technical details, like the ISO that you set the camera at, the stop that you're setting, and you'll be dealing with the lighting crew and the grip crew to set the lighting for the scenes. So you'd be doing all of that.
Okay, that's really cool. And you just mentioned picking the equipment. Is there a particular camera that you like to use the most, or like for any personal projects or anything like that?
I don't do a lot of personal projects. The most common cameras for me to use are the Arri Alexa series and the Red Epic series. I've used plenty of other cameras. I've got a feature coming up that I'm going to be shooting with the Sony FS7. I personally bought a Sony AS7 or A7 IIs just as an additional camera, and in case I had anything I wanted to do. At one point I've thought about doing an educational podcast of my own, and so that's another reason that I bought it.
Okay, that's really cool.
So can you tell us a little bit about some projects you've been involved in? I know that you have quite an extensive...
Yeah, I started in independent film back in the late 1980s, and in 1990 I moved to California, did a lot of independent, low-budget stuff, and wound up working for a guy named Roger Corman at his company, Concord New Horizons, which was one of the places a lot of people got their start there. A lot of people, well-known people like Jim Cameron, Ron Howard, Gail Ann Hurd, and from there I stayed busy with independent features until the early 2000s, when I started doing really big music videos. And I worked with artists like Eminem, Britney Spears, Mariah Carey, Moby, and stayed really busy with that for a while until video streaming started taking over. A lot of people were pirating music, and there was a huge loss of revenue, and big music videos were a casualty of that. Also, MTV stopped airing music videos, and around that time I started doing commercials. So I was doing a lot of commercials for about 10 years, and I also would do the odd feature film, and recently I've been focusing more on narrative. I've been doing a lot more feature films. I've actually picked up a few short films, so that's kind of what I've been doing. Most recently I did a film called Doolittle's Heroes, which is going to be, it's a Chinese-American co-production that will be released as a feature here in the United States, and in China it's part of a larger series that's got a much more expansive Chinese backstory, and it's called Sunset River over there. And in February and March I actually went to China to shoot part of that project.
Oh wow, that sounds awesome. Okay, and so did you want to ask anything to follow that up on that?
Honestly, to follow up on that, I would have to ask, like, what's your favorite to work on, in a sense? Like, do you prefer like the short films or the commercials or like features? What do you prefer?
Well, that's like asking somebody to pick their favorite child. It's each one has its own benefits. Commercials tend to pay very well, and they typically aren't but a few days, and so you're not working for a really long, grueling period of time.
So Brad, we know that you used a Super 16 on Cook County. Why was that?
That was an aesthetic choice made by the director. One of his aesthetic inspirations for the film was The Last King of Scotland, and that film was shot on Super 16, and it was there was a little bit rough around the edges, and there was a lot of handheld work. And for those reasons, he decided to go with that format.
When do you decide? When do you make that decision? Or?
Well, you make the decision in pre-production and conversations with the director about the aesthetic for the film. Handheld shots can give a more organic feel, a more spontaneous feel to the photography. You can also use it to introduce nervous energy into the image, which is one of the reasons we used it on Cook County, was to keep it a little bit off balance, keep things a little unsettled. In fact, there's a portion of the film that takes place away from this bad environment, and we shot that all on tripods to give a contrast.
Right. Oh, okay. I see that. And so, do you have a favorite lens that you use?
I don't have a favorite lens. I really, again, I pick the lens depending on the project, and there's so many to choose from various primes and zooms and anamorphics. One of the lenses I do use a lot is the Fujinon Cabrio 19-90, which is a lightweight zoom. Especially if you're working fast, it's really nice because it's light enough that you can use it on a Steadicam, you can use it handheld, and it gives you that range of 19 millimeters to 90 millimeters without having to swap lenses and recalibrate focus and rebalance the Steadicam.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Would you like to follow up on?
No.
Okay. Well, I have just one more question,
Okay.
or maybe two.
Okay.
What is the difference between a director of photography and cinematographer?
The words, they're exactly the same thing.
Oh, nice. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I needed to know that. And one last thing. What's your schedule like on film? And like when you're working on a film, how do you balance your life?
Well, films go anywhere from 3 weeks on up to several months. And typically you're shooting 5-day weeks or 6-day weeks with 2 or 1 day off. So it can get challenging, especially when you consider that you're working 12-hour days. Sometimes you're working splits, which is part day, part night, or sometimes you're working a night shift and you're working all nights. Sometimes you end a week on nights and you begin the next week on days, which means you lose some of your sleep time on that day off or those 2 days off.
Right. Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Overall, very informative. And thanks for joining us on our Millennial Lens Vodcast in collaboration with Students in Media Broadcasting Association here at Pasadena City College. Thank you, and we'll see who we bring in next. And so we'll see you next time.